So, how exactly do you take something deeply personal, a private tragedy, and turn it into this big, public, political call to action? Well, that's what we're going to do today. We're going to dissect the anatomy of a really powerful political message. Basically, look at how an argument like this gets built, piece by piece.
You see this sentence right here. This is basically the end game. It's the destination for the entire message we're looking at. And it's so powerful, right? It's personal, and it's built to make a political issue feel like it could happen to you tomorrow. So let's unpack how they get us to this point.
Okay, so first things first. The first step in this whole strategy is all about creating a very specific emotional atmosphere. I mean, before a single argument is even made, they're setting the tone very deliberately for everyone there and for everyone watching at home. And the language they use here is so deliberate. They don't call it a meeting or a press conference, right? No, it's framed as a truly solemn occasion. Now, that choice, it's a classic rhetorical trick. It's called pathos, which is just a fancy way of saying it's a direct appeal to your emotions. It's a signal to the audience telling them, hey, this is serious. Prepare for an emotional experience, not just some dry political debate. And the strategy keeps going. Think about it. The speaker doesn't say concerned citizens or fellow voters, do they? Nope. They say they are heartbroken Americans. What does that do? It creates an instant in-group. It forges this shared identity based on a really deep emotion. So before anyone even tells their story, they've unified the entire room through this feeling of collective grief. All right, so you've got this shared atmosphere of grief hanging in the air. What happens next? The message zooms in like a camera lens. It shifts from that wide collective feeling and it gets super personal, focusing on the individual cost of this loss. And what's so smart about this is how they take this big abstract idea of loss and make it completely concrete. By listing out these specific relationships, parents, siblings, children, it suddenly makes the pain real, tangible. It's a really powerful way to say, look, we're not talking about a statistic here. We're talking about losing the most important people in our lives. And then, from that list, the message drills down even deeper. It goes from the general to the specific, painting this really intimate portrait of just one person. And by describing an individual with all these specific positive details, the whole abstract idea of a victim just melts away. Instead, you have a real person, and that's what makes the loss feel so incredibly real and relatable. Okay, so the emotional foundation is laid. The personal stories have hit home. What's next? Well, the next step is to take all of that grief and channel it, to point it towards a specific political solution and a specific political figure. This is the moment, right here, where the message makes a hard pivot from the personal to the political. And to build that bridge, to get from personal pain to political action, the speakers introduce this really powerful idea. They frame it as the thankless job. And what this does is it portrays their fight not as something they chose to do, but as this difficult, necessary burden that, only the most committed people are actually willing to take on. And right here, you see that idea, that frame, being applied directly to a political leader. When the speaker praises him for taking on this thankless job, it kind of elevates what he's doing beyond just normal politics. It positions him as someone who's willing to do the really hard, unpleasant work that, most people would probably run away from. What this does is create this really stark contrast. On one side, you've got the families who are living through a nightmare and doing this thankless job. And on the other side, you have most people who, as they say, find it just easier not to do this. It's a classic tactic, right? It sets up a clear us versus them dynamic. It draws a moral line in the sand between the people who are fighting and the people who are just standing by. And this is the crucial connection. The message is basically linking personal suffering directly to political authority. The argument, which isn't stated outright but is definitely there, is something like this. If you haven't lived through our nightmare, you just can't get what's at stake. So you should trust us, and you should trust the political leader who's fighting for us. It's an appeal to a kind of authority that comes from lived experience. Okay, now we get to the final step in the strategy. And honestly, this might be the most effective one of all. The message can't just stay in that room full of heartbroken Americans. It has to get out. It has to reach everybody else. It has to become a universal warning. And the way they do it is with a simple, but wow, a devastatingly effective two-step formula.
First, you start with a fact, something that can't be argued. This happened to my family. Then you pivot, and you make it about the listener's potential future. It's a direct appeal to fear, and it's designed to make you, the listener, feel personally vulnerable and suddenly very invested in this issue. And so we end up right back where we started, with this one core statement. This is the whole takeaway. It's the line that's designed to stick with you, to echo in your mind long after you've heard it. It transforms a story about someone else into a potential risk for your family. It's a direct appeal to that very basic human instinct to protect the people you love.
So when you break it all down, what we've really just seen is a masterclass in how to turn personal grief into political fuel. It's this carefully built journey, right? From a private story all the way to a universal warning. And it leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. When it comes to these huge, complex national issues, what is the role and what is the true power of one single, deeply personal story?